All right, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us again for this month's CloudBytes hosted by Dean Dorton. We've made it to our final Sage Intacct release of 2024. So, our software services director, Philip Massey, is here to take you through all of the latest and greatest updates. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to use the Q&A icon up at the top to ask, and I'll be monitoring those throughout the session, and I'll make sure to give them to Philip at the end during the Q&A period. If we don't get to your question today, or if you think of one later, contact information will be included at the end of the session and also in the follow-up email. As always, this webinar is being recorded, so you'll get a link to the recording and slides in that follow-up email as well. And now, Philip, you're up.
All right, Nikki, thank you very much for the introduction. Let me get my camera turned on here and we will get started. Not that everybody wants to look at me, but I figure should probably have that out there. All right, so welcome. I appreciate you all taking time out of your day. I know we're getting close to Thanksgiving. Everybody's got turkey on their mind and dressing, cranberry sauce, all that good stuff. And I'm glad I just ate lunch because I would have made myself hungry if I had not done that by just describing Thanksgiving dinner, right? So I appreciate you taking the time coming, and hopefully it's going to be worth the time that you put into this. Today's CloudBytes session is going to be on the 2024 release number 4. So just to pause for a moment, I mentioned Thanksgiving, I mentioned release 4. Can you believe that today is November 21st and we are steamrolling ahead into the end of the year, and the next thing that you know, it's going to be 2025 release number 1. So let's go through, let's take a look at what's in this release. And if you have questions, as Nikki said, please throw them into the chat. We'd love to hear them. Happy to go into more details on any of the things that we talk about here. And just hope that you get enough out of this that it is worth your while, and you learn some new things about Intacct and the release, and they make you more efficient. That's what our goal is. So I'm going to start things off here by just a little bit of a note to make sure that all of our Sage Intacct customers know that you can become a certified specialist on Sage Intacct. So in case you had not heard, you can do that. It is a free certification, so there's no fees involved or anything like that. It goes through the university, the Sage University, and the Sage Intacct page. You'll get copies of these slides afterwards, so you'll be able to review this as well. But if you have any questions about becoming a Sage certified accounting specialist, please let us know. ERP support at ddaftech.com. That'll be an email that you get afterwards as well. And it's just in that Intacct page on the Sage University. So I think that's pretty exciting. They're extending all that kind of stuff out to customers. We just want to make sure that you're aware that it's there. Totally unrelated to the release. All right, so for this release, we have quite a bit of ground to cover. And it's funny, Nikki and I were talking earlier about, kind of went through a period with these presentations where we didn't have a lot of slides. A lot of things got condensed, and we did more chit chat, and maybe some of the sessions were a little bit shorter. But with this release 4, and as you can see here, it has been released already. So you do have this, and you have had it for roughly about 2 weeks. So with this release, we are excited because we do have a lot more to talk about. Not all of this is going to be pertinent to everybody, but we have tried to trim this down to the things that will be the most pertinent across the board for everyone, just like we normally do. Now, I have a team member on here who I refer to, and I don't think she's on this call, but I refer to her as the fixed asset queen, and that's Mitzi Stockford here at Dean Dorton. So same type thing. If you have any fixed asset management questions, please send them in to ERP support at ddaftech.com. You'll probably get Mitzi as the one who will respond to you. I'm going to tell you a few of the new things about this module. If you didn't attend Enlighten, just a quick reset. First of all, shame on you for not attending Enlighten, our customer conference. We had it a little while back. But if you didn't, it's okay. This Sage Fixed Asset Management module is the newer Fixed Asset Management module. So there are a couple, a handful technically of fixed asset modules you could choose from for the Sage Intacct application. This is the newest one. This is the one written by Sage. This is the one in the Sage Intacct solution. And it's the one that they are going to be, or is going to be, kind of the predominant solution from a Sage standpoint going forward. So they are adding features to this tool all the time. Every release is going to have some new features and functions from a fixed asset management standpoint, and from a naming convention, that is the key, the M on the end for management. That is the indication that this is the new one. If you hear Sage Intacct Fixed Assets, that's the original older one. Okay. All right, so the fixed asset management is going to allow users to post depreciation of a closed period to the current open period, and it's going to show a new field called the actual posting date on the depreciation schedule entries, give you that opportunity there to override that posting date. So essentially, if you're doing some catch up, you're now going to be able to better control the posting date for when that data is going to hit the general ledger. Okay, so new feature in this release. We really like that, overriding the posting dates. Couple of caveats to it. It must be in an open period. Again, this is generally for catch up. Whether you've had the fixed asset for 2 months and you just haven't posted depreciation yet, you've already closed those 2 periods and you can't post back into them because the GL's closed, or whatever the case or scenario may be, you'll have that option now of overriding those dates and posting into open periods, as opposed to potentially having to go back and open them and or do some manual workarounds for those prior period postings. So that's really super nice to have that built into the system now and give you that capability. Transaction allocations for assets. So allocations, so you do have more of an ability now within the fixed asset setup screen to access that allocation. And those, again, are those transactional allocations. I want to distribute 25% to this department, 40% to this department, 35% to this department, et cetera. You have that ability now. So maybe you bought some bulk assets. You bought all new office chairs for everybody in the organization, right? Christmas gift for everybody. Everybody got all new office chairs. So you are working with that now, and you've got one purchase, and that one purchase is going to be spread and allocated out amongst other all other dimensions and things like that within the organization. Okay. So that's nice to have that one. To be able to turn that on, there is a configuration item, and you can see all those screenshots here. Enable transaction allocations in GL setup, enable it in payables, and enable it in purchasing. And then add transaction allocations into that menu, their system there, to create those allocations, that 25, that 40, that 35, that split between different departments. You have to enable transactional allocations on the left-hand side of your screen here, these items. And then you have to go in and create the transactional allocation in the general ledger setup area. Okay. And again, an example of this could very well be, we bulk purchased office chairs to replace everyone's office chair as a nice Christmas gesture. And we're going to go in and use an allocation to not just charge those office chairs, those 100 office chairs to one department, but we're going to use an allocation to then charge that out to multiple departments. And what's good about that is that will affect your depreciation, not only just the original purchase accounts and so forth, but it'll be there for allocating depreciation across those departments as well. So really handy feature to have, and something that I'm glad and excited to see in this particular release. Now, probably potentially a little bit more exciting is this custom decline balance depreciation methods, right? So you're able to set in some true ups into how your declining balance methodologies will work in the system. Gives you more control over how you work with your depreciation and how it's actually calculated in the system as well. So you'll have an ability here to kind of design, more or less, design your depreciation rules so that it is calculating. If you have a custom schedule of some sort, if your organization has to adhere to it for whatever reason, you've got the ability in the system now to have a lot more control over how the depreciation amounts are calculated. Previously, that's only been available in the original fixed assets module. So I'm glad to see that they are taking that functionality and moving it over into the newer fixed asset module. So they are making a lot of improvements in Sage Intacct for what I would call technical interaction capabilities. And certainly one of those areas is going to be in those data imports. And we're seeing some of that streamlining, some of that ease of use now being pulled into the fixed asset management module as well. So this import process has been streamlined, combining all fields into a single sheet for an easier view. The add lines view has got some more data now with all of everything being in there, depreciation rules, all of that type stuff. And it's now only relevant fields are editable, the rest are read only. So as you can see in this kind of screenshot here, you've got some fields that are lighter colors, some fields that are grayed out and would be read only type of information in here. They're working really hard to make all of the import file processes inside of the Intacct solution much more palatable, much more user-friendly, more efficient for organizations, kind of moving away from a lot of what we've done in the past with here's your template, this is what it has to look like, to more of a let's collaborate with you to work with perhaps the file structures you already have or something along that nature, and now doing a good amount of work to come back and streamline that whole process. So glad to see that import process is improving, and that's something you're going to see all across the entire spectrum of the Intacct solution. So there's a notes field now. It's utilized to record information, service history, conditions, any kind of comments. It's a notes field. It's an optional field. It supports up to 2,000 characters, but it's giving you a place to put information. This is a little small for me, but I think it says next major service due at 40,000 miles. So while not really a reminder system, perhaps a tickler type system and information that you could take from here, put into a custom report and put on a dashboard as well to pull in some relevant information perhaps. So a lot of nice enhancements to the fixed assets module. We're excited about those. And, overall, I'm just really happy to see that Sage is putting a lot of emphasis on that fixed assets module to give a good working solution. The previous module inside of Intacct was a little bit, let's say, testy sometimes. Persnickety would be a good Southern word, I think, to use for it. But it could give you a little bit of trouble. And I appreciate whoever gave me that laugh on that. I like that word, persnickety. So I might try that again later. So let's talk about taxes. Now, when we talk about taxes, part of this is going to be VAT taxes, and part of this is going to be things inside of, let's say, order entry and purchasing. So if we talk about this, enhanced Canadian tax setup, I don't believe, looking at the call and the folks that are on the line here, that we've got folks that are working with VAT taxes. But to cover it for just a moment here, they are working on an entirely reconfigured, updated version of the Canadian tax setup inside of Intacct. So that's something that has been very much needed as the program pushes out more internationally. Kind of going back and picking up some of these things for certain countries that need to really be improved. So glad to see that that's coming through. Certainly, if you have any questions about any kind of Canadian tax setup, you're more than welcome to reach out to us. Since it is kind of a limited use feature within our clientele, I won't spend a whole lot of time here on it, but it does give you some more advanced filtering and override capabilities within those Canadian taxes. Tax schedules, you've got an ability now to set them to inactive, to inactivate those tax schedules if you're not looking at them anymore, not working with them anymore. And then new options for the tax detail definition. You can define if it should or should not be included in a tax submission. So you may or may not want some of your tax details. Again, let's say North Carolina tax schedule could be comprised of a North Carolina tax and a county tax and all of that. You've got a lot more control over how they're used, how they're maintained, and whether or not they are in certain reporting requirements as well. We are giving you in this release a little bit more capabilities for scheduling or tax schedule overrides in order entry and purchasing. So if you are using the advanced tax module or the VAT tax solution, you will be able to go in and enable in configuration of each module. You will be able to go in and enable the override. And then as you can see here, perhaps there will be a drop-down box with tax schedules that you could actually then come in on a line-by-line basis and override, choose a different tax schedule for that line item. So a lot of folks may not need that, but that is a really super nice feature to have. Lastly, we're working on France and some of the European countries. And the different entries and types of information that they need to get back out of the system especially for exempt customers and things like that along the lines of the VAT taxes. And this is in particular the FEC report update. Okay. Now, enough about ugly taxes. Let's talk about some more accounting functionality. Let's look at the general ledger. So the GL outlier detection has gotten a little bit of a facelift. First of all, let's talk about what it is. And this is the place, Nikki, where I would love to have a poll question. I know we can't do those today, and I didn't think about it until moments ago. But if I had it, I'd ask you how many of you are actually using GL outlier detection. So Nikki, if there is a way when you send this out to everybody, let's send them a question. Let's try to get a response back. I want to know how many people are actually using GL outlier detection, and maybe even how many people knew that it existed, right? So essentially, GL outlier detection is basically artificial intelligence. We hear AI everywhere, machine learning, all that kind of stuff, but it's that kind of technology that takes a look at what you have historically posted in your system and the patterns that you've created with those postings and compares it to what you're doing now. Flags any transactions that do not match so that you can then come back to them and take a look. It's all part of getting to what's called oh, look at that. Nikki, I do like Nikki. She's very nice. Everybody just give Nikki a hand for a minute. I know she probably won't be able to hear you, but Nikki does a great job. So thank you, ma'am. So the outlier, GL outlier detection with Intacct is a very cool feature, and it is one of those first preliminary steps that Sage has made to get you to this concept of a continuous close. And the idea is If you can catch any issues, problems, miscodings, typos, anything like that, when they occur, then you won't have to fix them at month end. And your month end becomes shorter and shorter and shorter. Now, one of the best things about GL outlier detection is it's free. So let that sink in for a moment. It's free. And it's machine learning that is going to take a look at your data and the patterns in your data and warn you if something seems awry. And then you can immediately go back and fix it. So if you haven't seen that, it's got an even better setup now than it did before. It's got, lower data requirements for what it takes to actually start to make those decisions about what looks off and what doesn't. So please let us know, ERP support at ddaftech.com, if you don't have this turned on and you want to turn on this free service that can potentially help you catch mistakes prior to the month end and make your month end quicker. All right, so accounts receivable. Let's talk about some AR stuff. You now have an ability to add a column on your AR statements for a running balance total. You will need to customize the statement to include the field, but you are able to do that now. There is a merge field in here now. All you really have to do, drag it out onto the form, get everything kind of situated and squared up again, and you'll have that running balance field out there. And the other thing is you are now getting currency symbols included for all numbers, which is fairly cool, especially as they, again, began to internationalize, or continue, I should say, to internationalize the software. That only makes sense. Customer reconciliation. I would love to say here, maybe another poll question. You don't have to do it this time, Nikki, but how many of you have customers and how many of you have issues reconciling their balance and perhaps even tying it back to the GL or reconciling it to what the customer has, or where did this credit go or where did that go, anything along those lines? You now have some subledger reconciliation tools with automated matching. Automatically matches payments with the corresponding invoices and adjustments, and flexible filters for matched, unmatched, partially matched transactions. Now, I am purely pontificating off the top of my head here, but I would say, look at that, she did it again. Thank you, Nikki. I would say that where they're headed with this is very similar to something that you're doing with your bank reconciliations. And that's just me speculating. That's nobody with any authority at all speculating about this. But if you read what they're doing and you take a look at what this tool can do, you are beginning to see some things in here about having matching capabilities to make sure that your customer accounts reconcile and that you're not constantly chasing things down with customers. So you do have to do a couple of things to enable the customer reconciliation. You have to enable it in AR configuration, update user permissions, and potentially create a document sequencing in here as well. So this doesn't take effect just, out of the blue with the release. You do have to go enable it. And that is one thing to pause just a moment and say, a lot of what we talk about with these update webinars are things that do need to be enabled. There are some things that need to be paid for, but for the most part, these things are going to need to be enabled. You're not, I used to say you go home on a Friday, you come back on a Monday and you have new features. I now say you go home on a Friday and you come back on a Monday and you could turn on some new features inside the system. So there typically are some steps that you have to take to enable a lot of these things that we're talking about. And if you ever have any questions about them, please do reach out to us. we're more than happy to help you and kind of get you down that right track. And oftentimes, even if there is a small charge for doing it, you get it done a lot faster and you don't spin your wheels and you don't get frustrated with it. You've got a partner here that can help you with these new features. So one thing to tell you about here that is a bit of a subtraction. Sage is working to sunset customer payment service integrations with Authorize.net and PayPal in November of 2025. So this is kind of with a megaphone here. We're starting to announce this now. They are sunsetting these two customer payment methods. So if you're using one of these inside of Intacct, please know that by November 25, you will need to move to one of the marketplace solutions that are out there. If you have questions about this, reach out to us. This is not a chargeable event. We're not going to bill you for this or anything like that. We'll be happy to talk with you about what you have as far as one of these go, and then help you to find one of these marketplace solutions. And on the off chance that you need to take customer cards or process ACH payments or have a customer portal or anything like that, and you don't have it, or you're not happy with what you have, same thing, reach out to us. It's not going to be a billable event. We will help you find a solution and get you to that point that you need to be at within your organization. Accounts payable, as I always say, it's just like accounts receivable, only in reverse. Vendor payments powered by American Express is being retired. December 31st, 2024, the following services will no longer be available in Intacct. Process all payments by December 20th. Same type of thing here. If you're using this, please reach out to us. We're happy to get you moved into something else, help you get moved into something else. There are a ton of solutions that are out there. And we do need to kind of work fairly quickly in this case to make that move. Okay. So reach out to us if you have any questions about that. Automatic vendor payment notifications to more recipients. And I wish I could see these on this screen, but the pictures are way too small in here. But basically, we are expanding, or Sage Intacct is expanding the number of contacts that you can automatically send payment notifications to. There are some checkboxes, and like I said, there are things that you need to do to enable these features in the system. This is one of those. So enable the option to include secondary email addresses in the AP configuration. So that's that checkbox right there. Enable payment notifications on the vendor record. I believe that to be that one right there. Payment notifications into the primary and secondary email address of the pay to contact specified on the contact list tab. So on the vendor record, there will be a pay to contact stipulated. That pay to contact can have multiple email addresses. Notifications will then be sent to both primary and secondary email addresses. Okay. So that's expanding that notification capabilities. Automated subledger reconciliation tool with automatic matching. So again, I said it's AP is just like AR, only in reverse, and you could say that the other way as well. They also are working on a vendor reconciliation tool as well to help reconcile vendor accounts. This is part of that whole month-end close, no close type of concept, to where you're eventually working all the time, having the system being able to check you with this and not having to take part of your month every month just to go back in and close out the month and reconcile your accounts and all those types of things. Intacct is feverishly working to build processes and tools into the system to give you that continuous close concept. Okay. Once you turn it on inside the system, a note on both of these, it's a go forward basis only. So it's not going to delve back into the vendor or customer history and help do any reconciliations. It will go forward from the moment you turn it on. But it matches payments with the corresponding bills and adjustments, and you have control with your different filterings as far as those matches. So we've talked about a couple of things: AR reconciliations, AP reconciliations. If you have questions about those, these could be very valuable tools within your organization. Again, we're here to be your partner. So reach out to us and we would be more than happy to walk you through the process and answer any questions that you might have on how it all works. Now, probably one of the features that I am most excited about in this release 4, is retainage. And the coolest part of this is retainage. The headline I would give it is retainage. It's not just for construction. Because what they are building out now is retainage capabilities inside core AR and core AP. You can now turn on retainage if that's part of what you have within your organization, and you can use that inside of your company and not necessarily have to purchase. And I said necessarily, so there are some caveats. Not necessarily have to purchase the full construction module just to get that feature. There is a bit of setup for it. You do have to enable it. You do have to create some accounts. You do have to specify those accounts and optionally enable it on order entry transaction definitions as well. So enable it in AR, enable it in order entry, create the appropriate accounts, and specify the accounts. Two of the biggest caveats: it's only for accrual companies, so accrual only based companies, and you cannot have contracts in your environment. So the contracts module, you cannot have that in your environment. You can't be accrual and cash. You can be accrual only and no contracts. So retainage setup and invoice generation, set up the default retainage percentage on the customer record. So here we're looking at McFarland Clinics, and we've got a default retainage of 15%. And projects generate the invoice. It will create an invoice with the appropriate retainage amount. So this is a, project-oriented type of thing. And to generate that project's invoice, it will then create an invoice with the correct retainage. The retainage release, updated permissions to be able to release retainage. So there are new permissions for releasing retainage. And then when you're ready to release it, there is a menu option, accounts receivable, retainage, and then you would add a retainage release transaction in the system. Accounts payable retainage, a portion of the contract intentionally withheld until the project is substantially complete. Add your GL accounts, enable it in AP, specify the retainage tracking accounts, and then enable retainage on purchasing transaction definitions as well if you need to do that. Again, it is only for accrual only companies, and you cannot have a contracts subscription. Accounts payable retainage release, you do go into the vendor and you set up the default retainage percentage, and you do need to give permissions to AP release retainage. So, again, it goes back to one is the reverse of the other. It's the same setup. It's the same concept behind them. You're doing it for vendors. You're doing it for customers. You're generating your invoices out of projects in that module, and it's calculating the retainage for those modules, and it's set up on your order entry, transaction definitions, and all those things. So they're bringing the retainage concept to where companies perhaps just with quote unquote, just with projects and not full blown construction can still take advantage of those retainage features. So that's exciting to be able to get that out there. Okay. AP automation, tax information is populated for companies that use the tax application. So this only applies to those organizations that are using the advanced tax solution. And is quite simply, the artificial intelligence, machine learning inside of AP automation is going to separate out those taxes. And it's going to try to create tax information and the tax details of an AP transaction that it creates. So that's cool to have that in this release for those that do track the taxes inside of Intacct. Cash management, Canadian checks, new blank Canadian check format. So we've expanded the capabilities of printing checks in Canada to be able to be a more encompassing solution. It's a validated format, blank check stock. So, gives you really that ability to, if you're a Canadian organization, to have a lot more control over your checks. They also have a new pre-printed format. So this one was the new blank format for printing all of the information on the blank check. They also have a new pre-printed format to be able to utilize different printing capabilities. And this is the key: select a printing format, CAD check 2.0. Okay. Platform services. Let me scroll ahead here just a second. All right, platform services. Internationalization capabilities. And basically what this comes down to is, as Sage Intacct becomes more internationalized and shows up in more countries, one of the things that you obviously have to provide a path for is the labels in the user interface. So as you can see here, more language options added for the UI labels. The following languages are supported. So we're just adding more language capabilities inside of Intacct as it expands more internationally. You do have to provision a support case if you need this, so let us know. We'll be your conduit with Sage to get this turned on. This is not something you can enable as an end user. If you need to be able to allow for French terms, German terms, Spanish, anything along those lines, reach out to us and let us know, and we'll work with you to open appropriate cases for it. I will note the Spanish is in beta at this point, so there would be discussions, both French Canadian and Spanish, that we would have to have prior to potentially enabling those. You can now better manage or easier manage dimensional relationships. New properties added for managing them. You can control the option to detach related dimensions from your object record. So you've got more control of not really creating them, but again, managing, ending that connection with them. So more capabilities to be more flexible with your dimensional relationships. And if you're not aware, a dimensional relationship is essentially that capability to be able to say this department dimension is somehow related to this location dimension, right? We only have an HR department in our Atlanta location. Therefore, we're going to relate those together to ensure that we don't have miscoded transactions. So it gives you that ability to solidify your data, make sure that what's being put into the system is correct, And so now we're giving you that ability to detach that relationship so that you've got some more flexibility with how it's configured. Okay. Employee expenses. So this is another one that is a tad bit exciting. Employee expenses, scans, images, documents, receipts. You'll now have that capability inside of the Intacct solution if you have that subscription to the time or the expense module. There are some permissions and other requirements. So user types, you have to be a business or an employee user. Right now, it's only available in the US. Here you can see the permissions that are needed and the configuration that's needed as well. So again, this is a new feature, new function, but it doesn't turn on automatically. There are some things that you need to do to make it work. So here we have how you get these expenses in. So an email address, so very similar to AP automation, this is employee expense automation or the beginnings of it. You'll get an email address. You can change it one time over your, I guess, history life of using it. So make sure that if you have something here, you have it correct. And then you're able to send images of expenses into this email address, and they will be pushed into the system, and they will show up here in this menu option item. Okay. So it is working towards something like the AP automation solution. Permissions, here you'll have a setup of those permissions. From the receipt list, a user can edit, view, or delete a receipt. So you've got here potentially a user who can come in and edit, view, and delete the receipts just directly from this list view. Utilize receipts in an expense report. So you can take these receipts, choose select electronic receipts from the My Expense or Staff Expense report, and then a list of inbound receipts will appear for insertion into the expense report. So in other words, these receipts are coming in. They're coming in as images, just like AP bills come in potentially as images. The difference being you go into your expense report and you pull up the expense report and you say select electronic receipts, and you can then choose which ones to pull into that expense report. It's actually pretty similar to the process that happens in the Nexonia application as well. That's a third-party tool that can do employee expense reports and credit card integrations, things like that. So it's really exciting to see this kind of thing start to come into the Intacct application. From there, you can approve the coding, you can check everything that's in here. You know, it's just like any other transaction at that point once you get it into the system. And you will have the ability to review the attachments as well. Okay. Sage Intelligent Time, that's a module that's available in Intacct. It's the time entry portion of Intacct. It's kind of been renamed as the Sage Intelligent Time, or the Sage Intelligent Time has become the time entry portion of the system. Available in late November 2024, Time Clock In, Clock Out. A mobile and web application will allow users to clock in and clock out, including breaks. Sage Intelligent Time pulls those entries into a summarized timesheet. So, available in late November 2024, the Sage Intelligent Time will have a clock in, clock out function. That's really cool. Rate cards available mid-December 2024. You'll be able to establish clear and consistent billing rates in the different rate cards that you have available. Let's talk just a moment about some early adopter features before that's most of the update for this particular release. But let's talk for a minute. First of all, early adopters, what that is. You can kind of consider this as beta to a degree, but it's actually a little bit past beta. I would say in all reality, and that it has gone through some testing. You're not the first ones to really jump into this application. But early adopters can influence how the product is developed. So if you ever participate in an early adopter program for Sage Intacct, you will be asked for feedback. You will be required to give feedback, and they will take that feedback into account. You'll work closely with Intacct product managers to make sure that the product in the early adopter is focusing on what matters the most. They did this with the AP automation. They've done this with the expense reports piece. They continue to do it with some things around vendors inside the system, but they've done early adopters quite a bit inside the system. One of the ones that's out there right now is tax submissions and being able to submit your taxes through the system. It's being extended to custom VAT. So if you are utilizing the VAT application inside of Intacct, there is a chance here for an early adopter function for you if you want to get involved. If you do, simply reach out to us at erpsupport@ddavtech.com and we'll get you into the program. There's no cost for any of these programs. And again, you have the ability to have influence into how the program is developed. This one is really aimed at those folks who process large quantities of bills, particularly at one time. Maybe you get 1,000 requests for payment, 5,000 requests for payment. You're putting on some type of program and you're paying everyone $100 for being involved in the program, and there's 2,500 people, so you need to cut 2,500 checks or what have you. This early adopter feature is aimed specifically at that, as far as getting that information into the system efficiently and quickly, and allowing you to process that data quickly and efficiently as well. So again, this is an early adopter feature. It's something they're going to be adding to the system as time goes by. You have the chance now, if you want to get into this early. If you do, and you process those types of transactions, please do let us know. We'd be happy to get you involved in the program. We love having clients in the early adopters, because that means you are indeed participating in the system and you're going to get more benefit from it as well. All right. So that gets us to the end. Nikki, did we have any questions that we want to try to run through?
We don't have any specific questions, though we did have a comment that it would be great to have a dimension relationship setup report. Do you know if that's something that's possible, Philip?
I don't, but I know a lot of people that do know if that's possible. So, Nikki, let's get with probably maybe Ian or Brian or someone like that, and see if they can come up with something.
Great. I will get that feedback over to them then.
All right. All right. Well, again, I do appreciate your time today. If something comes up after the fact, you can always reach out to me. There's my email address there on the screen. You can also always reach out to erpsupport@ddavtech.com, and we would be more than happy to help you. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day today. It's been lovely having everybody here. Very nice crowd of folks learning. And if you have any questions, let us know. Thank you. And happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you all. Have a great afternoon and weekend, and happy Thanksgiving.